Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to calmly unpack why just a few sentences spoken in Japan's parliament suddenly shook relations between Tokyo and Beijing. Let's get into what was really said and what it actually means. This was the message that just exploded across social media and news headlines after remarks from Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi. I mean, it sounds so direct, right? Unambiguous, like a massive shift in policy. But here's the thing. At the exact same time, her own government was saying something completely different. So this is the puzzle we're tackling today. How can both of these things be true at once? A headline screaming about a threat of war and an official statement saying, nope, nothing has changed here. Who's right? Well, to figure that out, we have to look past the headlines and get into the fine print. To understand the reaction, you first have to understand the speaker. Prime Minister Takaichi, she's widely seen as a conservative politician, very strong on national security, and has a long history of supporting Taiwan. Now, because of that background, Beijing was already watching her very, very closely, even before she made these remarks. And you can see right here why Taiwan is not some distant issue for Japan. I mean, a huge chunk of its energy and trade flows through sea lanes right next to the island. Its own territory, Yonaguni Island, is incredibly close. And, this is critical, Japan hosts tens of thousands of US troops. So a conflict over Taiwan would be happening quite literally right on Japan's doorstep. This proximity, this is the whole foundation of what they call the existential crisis argument. Okay, so with that map in your head, let's talk about the legal side of things. Before we get to what the Prime Minister actually said, we really need to understand the specific, unique rules Japan operates under. Without this piece of the puzzle, the entire story gets twisted. For decades, Japan's post-war constitution, especially this part, Article 9, was interpreted very, very strictly. It basically meant the military, which they called the self-defense forces, could only be used to defend Japan itself, period. Never to fight for other countries. But that changed just a little back in 2015. So, here's the crucial point. New security laws created this very narrow exception called collective self-defense. Japan can only use force if all three of these conditions are met. An attack has to threaten Japan's very survival, there has to be no other option left on the table, and the force used has to be the absolute minimum necessary. And that close partner? Everyone understands that to mean its formal ally, the United States. For years, Japanese leaders had what they called strategic ambiguity on Taiwan. They deliberately kept things vague, never saying whether a conflict there would meet those three legal conditions. Prime Minister Takaichi was the first one to actually connect those dots in public. And some analysts think this wasn't a mistake, but a deliberate move, an attempt at deterrence by clarifying a red line without actually changing any laws. And this timeline really shows that shift. You can see Japan moving from decades of deliberate vagueness to a famous but still personal remark from former Prime Minister Abe, and then finally to November 7th, 2025, when a sitting Prime Minister made the first official link between a Taiwan scenario and Japan's own security law. So here it is, the actual statement. Just notice how many conditions are packed in there. If China blockades Taiwan, and if US ships are attacked, and if Japan's government judges this threatens its own survival, then it might have to intervene. This is not a blank check to defend Taiwan. It's a very specific scenario about an attack on its ally, the US, becoming a direct threat to Japan itself. You know, a good way to think about it is like this. Japan isn't volunteering to be Taiwan's fire brigade. It's basically saying that if the fire in the neighbor's apartment gets so big that it starts burning down Japan's own door, and its ally, the US, is caught in that blaze, only then will it act to put out the fire. Really, just to save itself. From Beijing's perspective, though, none of those legal details mattered one bit. Any public talk from a foreign government about military involvement over Taiwan, well, that crosses a major red line. So the response wasn't just emotional, it was strategic, and it was designed to make this kind of discussion politically costly for Japan. The reaction went way beyond typical diplomatic protests, and fast. On social media, China's Consul General in Osaka, Xu Jian, posted this shocking comment. It was widely seen as a direct personal threat against the Japanese Prime Minister. It drew condemnation from both Tokyo and the US ambassador. It's a perfect example of what analysts call wolf warrior diplomacy, a much more confrontational and aggressive style of communication. And the response wasn't just words. Beijing demanded a full retraction, issued travel advisories, banned Japanese seafood again, and canceled cultural events. The message was crystal clear and very strategic. There would be real economic and diplomatic consequences for Japan even talking about military intervention over Taiwan. But this wasn't just a two-way fight. Next up, let's look at the other critical players in this whole drama: the United States and, of course, the Japanese public. This number is everything. With over 50,000 American troops based in Japan, any major conflict in the region that involves the US automatically becomes a Japanese security issue. The US presence is exactly why a Taiwan crisis can't be separated from Japan's own defense. Officially, Washington played it very, very carefully. Publicly, it reaffirmed its long-standing One China policy and reportedly urged de-escalation behind the scenes. The US was basically performing a delicate balancing act, not wanting to publicly criticize a key ally, but also not wanting to be seen as encouraging a more confrontational approach toward China. Now, turning to what people inside Japan actually think, the picture gets really complex. A Kyoto News poll found the public was almost perfectly split on whether to use force in a Taiwan situation. I mean, look at that. Nearly half said yes, but almost the exact same number said no. This deep division is absolutely crucial. While there's growing support in Japan for strengthening its defenses, the public is far from united on the idea of actually being drawn into a war. And you can bet this internal debate is something both Washington and Beijing are watching very closely, because strong public backing is critical for Japan to act in any kind of crisis. So, let's bring this all together. Let's contrast those simple, alarming headlines with the much more complex and, frankly, messy reality we've just unpacked. This table really nails the distinction. Let's just walk through it. What Prime Minister Takaichi said was that a Taiwan conflict could become an existential crisis under existing law, and that this might trigger action with the US. What she did not say was that Japan would automatically fight for Taiwan or that she was announcing some new defense treaty. The legal focus was always on Japan's own survival. So here are the key things to take away. The Prime Minister's words were a legal clarification, not some new promise of war. China's fierce reaction was a strategic move to deter Japan from saying anything similar in the future. The US-Japan alliance is really the invisible center of this whole story. And maybe most importantly, headlines and social media almost always strip out the crucial context, all the ifs, the mights, and the conditions that change everything. Which really leaves us with this final question. In a region this tense, where a few sentences can be misinterpreted and spark a major crisis, how can nations communicate their intentions clearly enough to avoid a catastrophic miscalculation? If this explainer helped you see the facts more clearly, feel free to share it, and please, let me know what part you'd like to dive deeper into next time.